Hello everyone and welcome to the only game from round 5 of this year's Grandchester Sinquefield Cup that did not end in a draw. It is Alireza Firouzja versus Anish Giri, and that's not the only interesting thing about this game. Also, what's interesting is that I've noticed that some of you enjoy it when I mention their head-to-head score. So up to this moment in time, until this game was played and maybe even beyond that, Anish Giri has never defeated Alireza Firouzja. They've played 7 classical games, 6 ended in a draw and 1 was won by Alireza. So Anish has never defeated Alireza, whereas Alireza has defeated Anish. So it would be great for Anish to beat Alireza to, get one win over him, but also for the standings in the event, as Alireza started by winning against Fabiano Caruana in round 1, and he's one of the leaders of the event, whereas Anish lost to Yanni Pomnishi, and he would also enjoy a win to get back in the standings. So let's check it out. It's quite a beautiful game, the Giuoco Piano, which is, kind of boring if you don't play the Evans Gambit, but sometimes it's not. Let's check it out. Alireza with white opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to e5, knight f3, knight to c6, and bishop to c4. The Italian game is on the board, and knight to f6, the two knights defense. I know I said the Giuoco Piano, but pawn to d3, and bishop to c5 we transpose into the Giuoco Piano, or this is the Giuoco Pianissimo variation. We have castles kingside, pawn to d6, and now pawn to c3, transposing into the main line of the Giuoco Piano. Pawn to a5, stopping pawn to b4, as white often plays it on move 4, so, you can't play it now, and pawn to h3. And this is already a very rare move. Here, standard moves are rook to e1 and knight b to d1. Pawn to h3 was played once in top-level chess by none other than Wei Yi, but he lost a game to David Anton Guijaro. So, okay, pawn to h3, we have castles, bishop back to b3, preparing to shift the bishop to c2 to defend the e4 pawn, so you have support for d4, as one usually does. In the Giuoco Piano, pawn to h6, we have rook to e1 and rook to e8, knight b to d2, and bishop to e6. So, all pretty standard Giuoco Piano moves, nothing new here. Not bishop to c2, bishop to a4, actually pinning the knight. We have queen to b8, again, very, very standard stuff. The queen comes to a7 to put pressure on the f2 pawn. And now there are a couple of games that reach this position. For example, d4 is a known move, knight to f1 is a known move, but Alireza goes for bishop captures and c6 right away. And it is now, as of move 12, that we have a completely new game. So, okay, Anish captures back, b captures and c6, and knight to f1. The standard remaneuvering of the knight. Okay, you could continue with queen to b6. It's kind of what you were trying to do, going after that f2 pawn. But we mentioned quite often that rook on e2 is quite a useful piece in in these kinds of structures. You could also go for something like pawn to a4, grab more space on the queen side, really prevent that pawn from coming to b4. But here we have bishop to b6, and if you look at the time above the board, this is the first real thing of the game. Anish spent 20 minutes on this move, so we could say he is out of book. Of course, he has seen this position before. Maybe he doesn't recall how to play it exactly. We have knight to g3, and now another 20-minute thing by Anish, pawn to a4. We have pawn to d4 by Alireza. This is, still not that big of a thing. Alireza is still on 1 hour and 43 minutes. We have queen to a7, putting pressure on the f2 pawn if the d4 pawn moves, and bishop to e3. We have queen to a5, and now queen to c1. This is, I would say, this is the first real thing for Alireza, as he spent some 20 minutes on queen to c1. And you can see what's happening. Queen on c1, bishop on e3, bishop captures on h6 might be an idea in some lines. The knight will come to h4 to f5 to put additional pressure on g7 and h6. So if you've ever played the Giuoco Piano, you know that those are the standard ideas that white goes for. We have king to h7, knight to h4, and knight to g8. We have knight h to f5, and here you should play queen to b5, or bishop captures on f5 right away. This is the safest way to do it. But Anish played pawn to c5, and he allowed something spectacular, which was not played in the game, but I'm pretty sure you guys know what I'm talking about. The idea that he missed by not capturing capturing the knight is knight captures on g7. And now it doesn't really look like you have enough, but the fact that c5 was played makes it enough. And the point being that after king captures, you can play d5. And this completely eliminates any counterplay that black might have. It keeps this bishop is not even a pawn. This bishop is less than a pawn. If it was a pawn, at least you could push it to b5. This way, it's a pawn that can go nowhere. Okay, well, let's say bishop to d7. Now you capture on h6 with check, and after knight captures, queen to g5 check. King to f8, and you don't even care about the knight here. You just go knight h5, and you bring the rook to f3. There is nothing black can do here. It's such a disgusting position, but yeah, it's key that you spot pawn to d5 as the idea. And even if knight to g8, you still just play rook to e3. Let's say pawn to c6, rook to f3, rook to g3. There's nothing for black here. Next move, queen captures on g8 is happening. You can't even play knight e7 because then queen g7 is checkmate. So, devastating. But yeah, after pawn to c5, Alireza missed it. He played d captures on e5. How much time did he spend on this? Yeah, he actually spent 11 minutes on this. So yeah, maybe should have invested a bit more, but you never know. Maybe you're investing time in something that doesn't exist. So it's hard when you're actually playing the game. Bishop captures on f5, knight captures. Now Anish says, all right, I'm not leaving that knight on f5 to wreak havoc. D captures on e5, and now pawn to c4. Again, realizing that the bishop must remain a pawn, or even worse than a pawn. We should really have a name for such a bishop. So you cannot go anywhere, but really just nowhere. So even if you played c6 and you brought it to b8 and then somehow to d6 and then what? No, probably something like this. Move the pawn, bring it to d8, and then something like bishop to g5. Maybe it comes alive. Okay, rook 8 to d8, and we have rook to d1. Alireza offers a rook trade. We have queen to a8, putting pressure on the e4 pawn, and just rook to d5. We have pawn to c6. It's not really a move you want to play, but like we said, if it's possible to get this bishop into the game, Anish should really do it. We have rook captures on d8, rook captures, and queen to c2, preparing to bring the other rook into the game. Queen a6, putting pressure on the c4 pawn, and the rook to c1. So you can move the queen, and the c4 pawn will be nicely defended. Rook to d7, clearing the d8 square for the bishop, and now pawn to a3. And here we have knight to f6. Like I said, you could also just remaneuver the bishop back into the game. Anish first plays knight to f6, goes after the e4 pawn if the queen moves, and now queen to e2. Alireza tries to trick Anish into capturing the e4 pawn, but if you capture it, then bishop captures on h6 obviously is very strong, so that's not going to happen. So Anish tries to trick Alireza right back. He plays queen to c8. And now, what is the idea behind queen to c8? Well, if a knight captures on e4, then the knight on f5 will be undefended. To give you an example, let's say rook to d1 or something is played, then you play knight captures on e4. And now after a move like bishop captures on h6, which worked in the other line, here you capture the rook with check, and once the queen moves, you play queen captures on f5, and you're just up a piece. So that's the idea. So after queen c8, Alireza brings the queen back, queen to c2, and now queen back to a6 by Anish, and queen to c3. Again, probably best, or the engine thinks that the best would be to just give up the c4 pawn, something like captures, and after queen captures on c4, go active with queen to d6. The problem is, even though both Alireza and Anish probably calculate this within a few seconds, is that after, let's say, queen e6 and queen f8 attacking the g7 pawn, trying to checkmate, knight e8, and checkmate is defended, and you really don't have anything better than bishop captures on c5. So just because objectively it is best, in human terms, it's too easy to defend, and it's better to just keep the position complicated and try to burn your opponent's time as much as possible. So queen to c3, and now queen to a5. Anish offers a queen trade, pawn to b4, a captures on b3, queen captures on b3, and bishop to c7. We have pawn to g3 and queen to a6. Continuing to put pressure on the c4 pawn, king to g2, improving the position of the king, and rook to d8. And now we have rook to a1. Here again, an opportunity presented itself to go bishop captures on h6, but it just It's so hard to realize why. But the fact is that Anish's pieces are so badly placed that you have all the time in the world, or so it would seem. Point is that after bishop captures, g captures, and queen e3, going after the pawn, knight to g8 defending, you have time for queen f3, queen g4, and queen g7. You're not going to checkmate black, but you're going to make it very, very hard for black to defend. For example, queen g4, rook to d7. You're going to attack the rook. Once the rook moves, for example, rook e7, you're going to go queen g6 check, king to h8, now queen to f5, going for knight g6. And it's just very, very hard to defend for black. And I mean, the queen and bishop are still completely out of the game. So even though you're down material, you're actually up material. But again, maybe a bit too much to invest time in. So rook a1, better just start advancing the past a pawn. Queen to c8, and now we have queen back to c2. Just adding a defender to the e4 pawn. Queen to d7, and now rook to b1, and bishop to a5. We have bishop captures on c5, and queen to d3. Anish gives up this pawn to activate his heavy artillery. Queen captures, rook captures, and now rook to b7. Also, you could play pawn to f3 to guard e4. Alireza goes for the active option. Knight captures on e4. We have bishop back to e3 as the bishop on c5 is hanging, and now king to g6. And this is the move that lost Anish the game. Well, most likely. Because here, if you just play rook captures on a3, you're still very much in the game. The problem is after rook captures on f7, now you play king g6, put pressure on the knight and rook. And after you move the rook, now you play bishop b4, force the rook away, or you force knight h4, checking h7, you keep the pawns, and it's a draw. But after bishop to e3, Anish played king to g6, and now, well, he missed something terrible. Alireza just goes knight to e7 check, king f6, knight captures on c6, and now bishop to d2. And now, by now, you guys already probably see what he missed. To give you a little hint, think Steinitz versus Bardeleben, and you guys will know what I'm talking about. So have at it while I give you a couple of seconds. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on taking the hint. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is, of course, rook captures on f7. Why did I say Steinitz versus Bardeleben? Well, after you check out this game, check out the first link in the description below. It is the story of the bravest rook in chess history. So rook captures on f7, if captured by the king, will be met with knight captures on e5 check. You pick up the rook, and then the two passed pawns just win the game easily. So king to e6 by Anish, but now the Steinitz versus Bardeleben theme, rook to e7 check, king to d6, and rook to d7 check once again. And now the rook has to be captured, or you capture the knight, then rook captures rook, then you just resign because you're down too much material. So king captures and knight captures on e5 with a beautiful fork. King to d6, knight captures on d3, bishop captures on e3, f captures, and now knight to d2. So okay, you're down 3 pawns, but the knight and king are very close to those pawns. If you can eliminate 1 or 2 of them, you might be heading into a draw. So let's see what happens here. Pawn to c5 check, king d5, pawn to a4, and now knight to c4. Going after this pawn, king to f3 defending, and pawn to g5. e4 check, we have king to d4, and now pawn to e5, sacrificing the knight. And there's nothing better than to capture the knight. King captures on d3, and now pawn to e6. We have knight to e5 with check, king to g2 even, and now knight to c6. And it seems that black will be able to eliminate the pawns. You're going to go after this pawn cannot go here, but there is only one move that wins the game. So for one last time, feel free to pause the video and win the game for Alireza while I give you a couple of seconds. I'm sure all of you were able to do it, as it's pretty much the only move that makes sense. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is pawn to a5. This is what Alireza played, and he was in this position on move 58 that Anish Giri resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So his second loss in the tournament, first Yanni Pomnishi, now to Alireza Firouzja. Tough break for Anish, but it is Alireza who takes sole lead in the tournament going into the rest today. And here you resign because, okay, if you capture, of course, the e-pawn queens, and what else can you do? If you play king c4, then you just start pushing forward, you capture this pawn, just pawn to a7, and now either you queen this pawn or black will capture and then play e7, and there's no stopping the pawn. The king is too far, the knight is too far, and the three pass pawns prove to be unstoppable against the king and knight. So yeah, beautifully played by Alireza. He did give Anish chance to bounce back. He didn't really take advantage of all of the opportunities that Anish gave him, but in the end, yeah, the player who makes the last mistake, of course, you know how the saying goes. And these are the standings. Let me just bring that a little bit down. So Anish currently in last place with 1.5 points, with 2 points Nodirbek Abdusattorov. Like I said, I mean, if someone told you, yeah, Anish is last or Nodirbek is last, or you'd be like, but this is a super tournament. Everyone is a super grandmaster, and someone has to be last. I mean, that's how it works. With 2.5 points, Yanni Pomnashi, Pragnananda, Dingliren, Fabiano Caruana, Gukesh, and Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. With 3 points, Wesley So, and a full point and a half ahead of the world champion and the World Championship challenger is Alireza Firouzja, the chosen one. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Big congratulations if you found not one but both video moments, post the video moments. I would like to thank Michael Bowers, Carmen Polifronio, Robert Stadelman, GersneyChessFestival.org.gg, and MyChessSets.com for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And sorry about posting the other day, but as this is played in the United States, I'm in Europe. By the time these games are finished, it's already 1 a.m. So you know, I'm already sound asleep. You know, so sorry about that. See you soon.